I'm going to show you now how I edge veneer the panels. What I've got here is the bottom of the center cabinet, and I want to apply edge veneer to the sides. First thing I did was to go and find the pieces of edge veneer that I had cut from the original veneer so I could get a nice match. And this would be the right side of that bottom. So right now I'm holding the right side pieces, and they in fact match the grain nicely. So I'm going to take those two halves, and the very first thing I'm going to go ahead and tape them together so that they're easier to work with as I do this glue up. Just a piece of tape there to help hold this together. Go ahead and iron that down. Dry up the tape. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and smooth up the edge. This was cut on the table saw. It's got a little bit of roughness, so I'm taking some P220 grit sandpaper on my sanding block, and I'm just going to go ahead and smooth it up. And actually I'm also trying to kind of round the edges just a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and I'll just make sure I don't have any stubble on the faces. And that should be ready to glue. Now these pieces of veneer are actually a little long because they were cut from the original rough veneered pieces. And so what I want to do is I want to trim them to the approximate length. So I'll go ahead and get my orientation right and just make a little mark here where the front is, and another little mark, it's shifted on me, okay, where the back is. And then I'll just use a pair of scissors and trim them about 3/8 of an inch or so long. Okay, and it'll iron on about like this. Now I've noticed that the curly maple veneer has a little bit of texture to it, a little ridging, and I'd like that ridging to flatten out when I iron the veneer on. So how I'm going to solve that is I'm going to use a little bit of veneer softener. And you can make this stuff up yourself at home, or you can buy it pre-made. This particular veneer softener comes from joewoodworker.com, and it's relatively reasonably priced. You know, it's reasonably priced. It's relatively easy to use. You just brush it on, and I've found that it softens the veneer a little bit with this iron-on gluing. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little of that on. And then I'll go ahead and just dab off the excess. What I really like is I'd like the veneer to be soft, but I don't really want it to be swollen. I know that's probably not possible. It's going to swell up some with the wetness, and so it's a trade-off. Okay, now while that's drying, I'm going to take my Better Bond white veneer glue that I talked about earlier in my experiment. I'm using the white veneer glue rather than an actual heat lock glue for the iron-on veneer, because this leaves a white line, a glue line, and you can't really see it. So I'm going to go ahead and brush some of this on. I want to get it on kind of thick. I'm actually going to put a second coat on as well, because the last thing I want is a glue-starved joint with the iron-on veneering. I can't get the pressures that I normally get with veneering, and the glue. What we do is we spread it on here and we let the water pretty much dry out. It takes 20 minutes or so. Let the water dry out, and then that just leaves the plastic resin behind that we're going to melt with the iron. So I want to make sure there's plenty plenty of glue here when that happens. And we glue both the veneer and the substrate in this case. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this on the back of the veneer as well. Just brush it on. I've got a little a flex brush. Get them at the hardware store for 10 cents each. Work real good. Okay, I'll let that glue set up for about 20 minutes or so. The second coat of glue has been applied and it's dried off. You can tell there's no sheen. If you see a sheen, that means you're still a little bit wet, so you wait for the sheen to go away. And the same thing with the piece of veneer. I can touch it, there's no stickiness to it, so I'm ready to go. But you don't want to wait too long with this. You want to catch it while it's before the glue cures. Is best, and so I'm going to go ahead and line it up and iron it on. Make sure I've got the front and the back figured out. Here's the back side. I'll go ahead and line up my center line of the veneer because that's how I'm telling that the veneer is the grain is going to flow nicely around the corner. And let me just go ahead and iron the center on briefly, get that in place so it's sticking. Okay, there she goes, and maybe do a little bit of adjustment here to make sure that I'm properly lined up. Okay, I've got it generally where I want it. Now I'm going to go ahead and really let some heat get in there. Make sure the glue is really bonded well. Put as much pressure as I can. I've got the heat on this just a little above the wool setting. That seemed to work well. Okay, that seems to be very nice, still fairly warm. The next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and just roll over the edge just slightly because when I sand it I want just a slight roundness on the edge. So just roll the iron just a little bit, keep the heat on it, not too much, I don't want to break the veneer. Come back to the other end where it's cooled off a little bit and roll it the other way. And make sure the ends are nice and tight here. I'll roll the iron just slightly towards the front and back. Now I'll just go ahead and check to make sure it looks like I have a good bond. That looks good. Good shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and let this cure. All we've really done is set the glue. We haven't cured it, so we want to let this set for a few hours to cure. And now I need to cut off the excess veneer. For that I'm going to use a little tool called a bandit edge trimmer. It's simply razor blade type blades in a device that will hold this, and I can trim fairly close to the edge, and later on I can clean up the joint with some sandpaper. I found that to make this go a little easier, it's nice to soften this edge of veneer with a little veneer softener. I found that it makes the blade cut a little nicer on this particular veneer. And so I'm just going to go ahead and carefully put a little veneer softener on the edge. Try not to get it into the center of the veneer because I really don't want to be dimensionally changing the veneer that's already attached. But I do want to make it so the blade cuts a little more smoothly to eliminate any tear out. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and blot this a little bit so we don't have too much soaking in. All I'm trying to do is just soften this very edge. Okay, now you take the trimmer, and it's designed to fit tightly against the side and top. And all you need to do is get the blade engaged, and then you simply push it. And it makes a fairly close cut there. Now, I'm not going to go all the way to the end because I want to come in from the other direction because I don't want to have any tear out at the end. So I'll go ahead and do this side now. And then I'll just come around and repeat the process coming in from this edge, from this end, excuse me. Now I'm trying not to get the cut too close to the edge because I want to be able to come in later now with some sandpaper on a block and actually make this a very smooth edge. But it did a nice cut. Good little tool. Here's another way to cut off the excess on the edge veneering. I'm going to use a veneer saw, and I've sharpened it in a special way described in a book by Mike Burton called Veneering: A Foundation Course, where he sharpens the teeth of the veneer saw to be nice equilateral triangles and then makes them knife-like. As opposed to saw-like, they're like little knives, and they make a very clean cut, and the object is to be able to cut off the excess without chipping out any veneer. So first I'm going to start on the ends, and I'm just going to do a nice gentle cross cut to get the ends. Okay, and then to do the long edge, I'm going to tilt the work slightly so I get lots of pressure on my base board here so that it minimizes any chance of tear out of the grain. And then I'm just going to take long, gentle strokes, as many as it takes to cut through the veneer. I'm not trying to force the knife into the saw into the veneer particularly. A little bit of pressure. I'm just trying to gently slice through the fibers. You can hear when you start to make it all the way through, you get a slight tearing sound. There we go. And we get a very nice clean cut. Now I'm going to use some sandpaper to get the edges that I just trimmed nice and flat with the surface of the veneer. I'm using my downdraft table. This particular table is a Denray. I like it. It takes the dust and sucks it down into filters, which keeps me from breathing it, because I found that hand sanding in my shop is makes the most dust airborne. So I'm going to go ahead and use a table, and I've made a block of poplar. There's no padding on it, it's just flat. Put some 220 grit sandpaper, which is about as rough as I ever like to go, and I will just sand along the surface here and get the edging nice and flat on both sides, and sand a little bit on the face, and then relieve the edge slightly, and that will be my rough sanding. Oh, by the way, also I've marked the name of the panels on the back edge, the edge that will be glued to the back, won't be seen later, so that I don't get my panels mixed up as I start sanding off all the marks I made in pencil on these faces.